that time. And then on the right is a picture of New York, because that's where she grew up and that's where her childhood was, and that's where she first got her job and then ended up leaving that job. So those are both big parts of her life.
Our thesis statement is we created a suitcase that symbolizes Dorothy's emotions when she moved from New York to Boston. Our goal for this project was to show Dorothy's ambitions and independence throughout the 4 pictures engraved in the wood. Even though we mainly focused on the transition from New York to Boston, it shows that Dorothy was very ambitious and had to overcome struggles while she was in New York and Boston. Our first precedent is a picture of a suitcase that opens up to have a design in front. There's no really pop-up, it's kind of just like 2D, there's not much to it, so we kind of moved on from that.
And then our second precedent is more of like an installation, which after the mid-review we started to create more of an installation rather than like a story inside of a suitcase. So our very first sketch, this was like just getting ideas down on paper, and it was going to be a sensory room, so we're going to have Dorothy be able to walk in and experience what she experienced quitting her job and like different sensory things involving her life. But then we progressed to more of like an in-depth like installation, more of an experience for her, so more interactive items.
So our second sketch was we started to put it into 4 different pieces. New York City, Long Island where she grew up and had her first job, and Boston where she kind of left everything behind. And the 4th one would be about her ambitions and always wanting more in her life. Our sketch number 2 is the same thing, but we kind of made a 3D version. We wanted it to be like a square suitcase, but we moved on from that to be more 3D.
So our initial prototype was going to be a suitcase, so we just made like a simple cardboard box and drew a zipper on to kind of just see what we were working with and what we hoped our final product would look like. But then we progressed more into a suitcase that could actually open up, and inside would be Dorothy's life story and everything about her. But then after that, after we got some feedback on the mid-review, we decided to make more of an installation, like I said, and rather than focusing on just everything inside of a suitcase, it would be more something that she could really touch and interact with, just out front and open instead of closed up in a box. So you can see there's New York City at the top there, and then with the yellow 3D printed house, that would be Boston, and then so on. So
on our final product, while we still did have 4 pieces, we decided to split it up into 2. The bottom part being New York. The first the first laser cut image is her growing up with her dad, and the Empire State Building represents her moving out of the city to Long Island with her family. The second laser cut image represents her ambitions and everything that she wanted. The 3D printed desk and table and chairs, that represents her job that she just wanted to get away from and grow on from. And the top part represents Boston.
So as you can see, here's a side-by-side picture. So on the right here is Boston, and there's the 2 pictures. The picture of the person sitting down represents her at a hard time because she went through a lot of struggles in her life, quitting her job and moving. So that was like a big deal, and it was hard for her because being a woman at that time, it was very sexist towards women, and she wasn't getting the job she wanted, so she had to kind of restart in Boston, which is very difficult for her. So that's why it's like a person contemplating their actions and seeing if that might have been the right choice or might have been the wrong choice. And then on the left is a picture, or just like a wave, and that symbolizes her riding the wave because she's basically at the top and she conquered those problems and got through the hard time. And then the street sign there, it says hope because she was very hopeful throughout all of it and persevered. And then the houses are just her in Boston.
All right, thank you guys.
Nice job, John. You did it. Good job.
So yeah, if I could start, I just want to say that I think something you've done really well here is kind of this mixing of mediums between the laser cut wood and the 3D printed plastics. That with the different colors, I think specifically I like the arrangement of the desk and the photograph behind it a lot. I think there's it's challenges when you have these different parts that kind of are different materials and putting them together. You've done really well. I think something that I kind of want out of this is a stronger connection to this belief in yourself that you talked about at the very beginning, of how no matter your location or your age or your gender, as long as you are firm in who you are, and you're gonna succeed. And I see the story here, but I don't know if that message is still carried through the same story.
Yeah, I think that you guys have a lot of great ideas and story behind your project, like Keenan is saying. So I think in your next step, if you were to have more time, actually connecting those pieces more to have that like continuous, either to have them all point towards the central story or to have something that is more continuous to walk through. That makes sense, rather than the separate pieces all collected to really get that point across.
I'm curious, what was Dorothy's reaction when she did?
Dorothy loved it. She thought it depicted her life really well. And while we were bringing it out to her car, she actually invited us for cookies at her house.
Okay, that's great.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Good job, guys.
Nice work, John.
Yeah.
Who do we have next?
I wanted to go.
J-Man? Right, J-Man.
Go, Jimin. Go, Jay.
Let's see. Yoda. Who's your partner?
You already love
Chris and J-Man are good now. Projects? Yeah.
Let's go anyways. What's left in here that wants to go? Anderson.
Jeju,
Anderson and
Peter.
Jay can go after these guys.
All right. Ooh, I like
Peter
this.
and Peter and
Take it away.
So this is our project. It's the Lifeless Systems, and this is us. So this was our first president. It was this is a Raider back in World War II when it was just bunch of just plain meadows there, and what this represents is that our interviewee John back then was a worker to invent this radar technology. And this president is how we could reflect this failure in labs and experiments throughout this process of inventing this radar. Also, this is
So what we got from here was that we decided to build a sort of like a marble run to represent how the radar worked, but like a simplified version. So this is what we thought about. So our thesis. Our tabletop object is an interactive system model. The objective is to get the marble to roll through all of the slidable marble ramps that are hidden from view. And so the ramps are positioned at different heights within the different columns. So this object tries to represent a radar functioning as well as how John fixed radars using his knowledge of systems. So the sensory memory we're focused on is sight and touch. So actually we're trying to express sight from the outside, but we're also trying to eliminate sight because we're hiding these ramps from view, which is like saying that you can't, with all the circuits inside of a radar, you can't really see it to be able to just straight on determine what's broken with your eyes. So also for touch, it is an interactive model, so how you're fixing a radar, you obviously have to use your hands.
So this is our basic rough sketch of how our project is gonna be like. So it's basically just like boxes to start off from, and ramps inside these boxes. And we decided to make them into multiple stories so that will be manipulated as we talked about fixing the radar from our thesis. And here we just kind of gave like a sketch of how our ramp would really look like if it were to having the marble represent like the frequency waves in the radar. And these are the real dimensions we used, 3 inches, 4x4 and 4x7s to create these actual model boxes. That's just how our model looked like. It's just it was it was not laser cut up because this was a prototype. So we cut it this cardboard with dimensions, and yeah. And this is how we put out the ramp inside the box. As you can see, there is no clear view. You can see the ramps from outside.
Okay, just to quickly add, as you might have noticed, we didn't include the other projects or other prototypes that we thought about because we actually, when we were starting this project, we actually both agreed on going this path to build this marble run. So here we have a funnel. So what we got from it was through this design we had, if the marble missed the ramp, then it would have to come out from the column. So we thought of a funnel how it gathers everything together, and then it like forces it out from one direction. So that's what we thought, and you can see here how the marble is supposed to roll down if it misses the ramp. And so here, this is our final project. We laser cut it. This is made from cardboard, and you can see the circle cutouts are where the marble goes, and then those rectangular cutouts on the bottom, that's where it would roll out. So as you can see here, it's not super neat looking, but we created like this funnel dome, upside down dome shape for the marble to roll out if it gets stuck, and we built the columns, the slider columns out of wood. So you see all the we actually tried and failed a lot here, and that's why we added a lot of cardboard to create more friction, so it would move up and down and stay there.
10 seconds.
So these were notes from John. John gave us a feedback of how they're like more of a lecture of how radar was really made out of. So we added this exterior wrap to represent the receiver from this project, and we spray painted them. Yay!
Awesome. Good job, guys.
John.
I love how you guys were so intentional about the sensory aspect of this and the sensory experience, actually highlighting this is how sight is incorporated, this is how touch is incorporated. And I think that intentionality shows throughout your design. It's great to see that you guys experimented and failed just like your design is supposed to evoke, or that experience that your design is supposed to evoke. So you went through that process, you tried, you edited your design. In the next iteration, perhaps you could have used all your trial and error to make it in one go a little bit neater, but I think you really got the point across and it turned out really well.
I think we were saying this, a lot of the coaches were saying this when you were presenting to John and other people, that from the outside, it just looks like people would be fooled that, oh, it's a marble trap, they made a marble trap. But I echo what Ms. Ray said, that the process that you had to go through to make it actually successful was amazing. And you have much more than a marble trap. And I think it could be missed, but how much you connected with John and told his story through a marble track, and the actual designing of this interactive like piece you had to move to make it a true path was pretty impressive. So
Yeah, our next step, if we were to have time to talk about, would have been how we could visually also represent how this, not only a marble run, but also will represent John's process through it. So that would be our next focus if we had more time during this project.
Can you speak to John's reaction? It was actually really, really fun to watch John interact with this. And I remember him showing you guys sketches when you went back for your follow-up interview. So to see him interacting with this, I mean, he was so hyper-focused and like engaged with this. What was his verbal reaction? What was he saying?
John was an MIT professor, so he really gave us like a lecture of like how radars really worked out, like all this waves, cool science, equations. Yeah, with those feedbacks, we tried to put the key points from a radar, which were the senders, receivers, and stuff out. Yeah.
So last Friday when John came for the visit, when he first saw it, we kind of introduced our project. We showed him how we improved since the mid-review, and then after that we showed him how it works, and then actually he found it really fun and he started like trying to figure out how it works. Then he actually got it fairly quickly, and after that we started geeking out on radars.
Awesome job, guys. All right, apparently Hanson and Jay have volunteered, but because it is 9:37, I don't want you to be overly rushed. So, Ms. Ray, Mr. Gray, we're going to take a break, so you guys can go get a coffee, do whatever you need to. I think we'll start back up at 10 o'clock.
Great, sounds good.
All right, so...
Oh, right, they have it.
Right, so they've got recess now, so we'll take a little
Okay.
brain break, and we'll be back for round 2 at 10 o'clock.
Great.
You can stay on the call or tune back in, whatever works for you guys.
Great.
And are we getting everybody in these 2 periods, or
Yeah.
are we gonna have leftovers?
No, the hope is to get them all in.
Awesome. I'll come down to meet you.
Okay.
We'll join you there.
Okay, cool. See you
See you in
soon.
a little bit.
I didn't officially, one group that didn't go. Don't worry about it. It was awesome.
Where did they all go? Huh?
There's one group that didn't go.
From that class, you mean?
Yeah.
There's a bunch. These guys are gonna start the next one.
Okay, but you got,
You have Vlad, can you go see if you can get out of it? So sit there and start.
5 minutes.
I'm in kindergarten. You guys are doing 10 to 10:50?
10 to 10.
And then we'll all be done?
I hope that's the whole. Huh?
It's a bummer. But, okay.
Next period. Can you see if you can get out of it? Yeah. I mean, that was great so far.
Perfect. Hello, Mrs. Jones.
Actually, I guess I... Are we in here for a reason?
They're really good.